Hello and welcome to the October edition of the Pembrokeshire Bird Diary for 2020. I'm Annie Haycock from the Pembrokeshire Bird Group, here to share some of the birding highlights of the month. We'll start with a report from Dave Astins at the Gann.
October at the Gann started nicely, with this ruff, which continued to the end of the year, and a smart juvenile curlew sandpiper. 2 days later, on the 3rd, there was a significant increase of Mediterranean gulls with at least 52 birds present, a really notable count for the Gann in October. On the 16th, we got a crabhall garden tick with a yellow-browed warbler, and it was one of at least 5 different birds that we recorded on this peninsula during mid-October, and several others were seen by other birders. It really was a good year for this species on the Dale and Marloes Peninsula. On the 15th at St Anne's Head, we recorded this ring ouzel, which was the only one we saw all autumn, and there were very few of them around, it seemed, in 2020. The month at the Gann finished with a bang with this stunning adult Bonaparte's gull, found very late afternoon, and myself and Lisa and George and Fiona from Dale Fort were able to enjoy it until dusk, feeding just metres from us below the sea wall. This particular photo shows the bird with an adult black-headed gull and shows how different it is in terms of the size, the small black bill and the grey shawl around the neck, and this photo showing the underwing, which is pale compared to the dark of the outer primaries of the black-headed gull, and the bright legs, which were this time of year were slightly orangey but by the midwinter will turn a deep bubblegum pink. A really smart bird, and the 6th for Pembrokeshire, and it is interesting to speculate whether this was the same bird that was seen earlier in the year on the Tivy in June, and one at the Gann in November 2018 could also relate to the same bird.
In September, the vast majority of the Manx shearwaters breeding on our islands head south for the winter. As the birds leave under cover of darkness, this exodus is rarely noticed by those of us on the mainland. However, some young birds manage to head in the wrong direction, and if the weather is stormy, hundreds can be blown onto the mainland coast or further inland. We have a protocol and a team of volunteers to deal with these misplaced birds. Lisa tells us how they coped this year.
Here's a quick update on another season for Team Shearwater, our fantastic band of volunteers who helped to rescue grounded Manx shearwaters as they fled from the Pembrokeshire Islands. 2020 turned out to be another busy but rewarding autumn, with our first phone call for help coming early on the 24th of August. At times during the season, we had so many birds that we ran out of cardboard boxes to keep them in during the day. A quick phone call to Pets at Home in Haverfordwest saved us, really, and the staff made a kind donation of lots and lots of pet carry boxes, which were soon full of shearwaters awaiting release. Throughout the autumn, everyone rallied around to collect birds, store them safely during the day and release them from a suitable cliff top at dusk. We tried hard this year to build a larger team of people scattered along the coast, cutting travel to a minimum, with the nearest person dispatched to locate the bird, with calls for help coordinated by the Wildlife Trust, myself and others, and the RSPB staff on Ramsey. As last year, there were some amusing stories of disorientated birds turning up in strange places. My favourite was probably a bird on a trampoline in Marloes. There was one at the chocolate factory in Haverfordwest, which I obviously went to collect, and the really lucky bird found at Withybush Hospital and taken into care by the nurses there. We had our usual wayward individuals that made their way inland, one up in the Preselles at Mainclogog and another along the river at Llandovery. Our last birds of the season came in on the 10th of October, 48 days after the first. A total of 161 shearwaters were rescued by our team in 2020, plus 5 guillemots and 1 very cross gannet. We know that there are other unsung heroes who quietly do the same thing across South Wales and have done so for many years, so the total is likely to be much higher. But it's heartwarming that people go to the trouble to phone for help and that they want to learn all about the mysterious black and white bird in the back garden. So thanks to everyone who put themselves out to help these special birds on their way this year. See you all again in 2021.
October proved interesting for Webb's counts. Nothing rare in terms of water birds, but there were the highest ever October totals of Brent geese, common sandpipers, golden plovers and ringed plovers. Until the winter of 2010-11, goose-anders were virtually unknown in September and October, but small numbers are now regularly seen here at this time. Goldeneye are another species that don't usually feature in Webb's counts until November, but this one just made it to the Tivy in time for the October count. And on Sprinkle Pill, David Ord managed to photograph 2 spotted redshank on the 12th. Small numbers used to regularly winter on the Cleddau Estuary complex, but we haven't seen much of them in the last few years. This Webb's count coincided with the International Golden Plover count. This takes place every 6 years or so, and the aim is to count all the birds in Europe in one weekend. David Ord photographed the flock resting on the mudflats at the mouth of Sprinkle Pill, and then counted them at leisure from the photos. The flock contained 1,443 birds. He repeated the exercise a couple of days later, and the flock had now grown to 1,702 birds. These birds took to the air several times while the Webb's counts were being done, but nevertheless the counters covering that area and nearby count sectors came up with a similar total. Up near St Justinian's on the 22nd, John and Marion had a close encounter with a red-breasted flycatcher. The bird allowed them close views for nearly 2 hours as it foraged along the lane. This species breeds in Central Europe eastwards to the Ural Mountains and winters mostly on the Indian subcontinent. A few adults overshoot in spring and a few juveniles head west instead of east in autumn. We seem to get 1, or maybe 2, in most years. There was also one, perhaps the same one, on Skomer for 3 days during that week. Some of our summer visitors are still around and worth looking out for, as migration for many species often continues into November. Richard Ellis photographed this smart first winter wheatear at Gupton on the 8th. Brian Southern was looking for yellow-browed warblers at Dale on the 13th when he came across this lesser whitethroat, feeding up for the next stage of its migration. And Dave Astins was also looking for migrants at St Brides when he came across this pied flycatcher on October the 18th. This is the latest record here for the last 30 years. And now Richard and Giselle will tell us about what's happening on Skocombe.
A flyover dotterel on the 1st was our first since September 2014 and made this just the 12th year with a record. The 4th yellow-browed warbler of 2020 was found feeding in bracken at Sugar's Delight on the 2nd. Rough weather on the 3rd produced the first Pomerine skewer of the year, this our first since 2018. The inclement conditions grounded well over 100 hirundines, birds which took shelter on the south-facing cliff tops.
A firecrest and the first lapwing of the season were logged on the 5th, and the 2 humans, who had been observed regularly around the island since early September, were last seen on the 7th. The 5th yellow-browed warbler was found near the pedestal on the 12th, whilst the first fieldfare of the year arrived with 11 redwing. The following day 2 green and white fronted geese touched down near North Pond. Although there have been records in just 18 previous years, this species has been logged in 5 of the last 8. A Lapland bunting also made an appearance.
A blue tit at the well on the 14th caused some excitement, as it was just the second to be logged here in the last 8 years. This is a species which used to appear far more regularly. There were peak day counts of 50 in the Octobers of 1964 and 1967. The 15th produced the 5th ever great spotted woodpecker for Skocombe and the 2nd ever record of grey egret, the latter joining the roosting geese on North Pond, which also contained a barnacle goose.
A Chetty's warbler was found skulking at the well as it fed on crane flies on the 17th. This was just the 3rd for Skocombe following September singles logged on the 9th in 1986 and the 30th in 1987. It proved to be the longest stay in Skocombe record and was observed irregularly during the remainder of the month and into November. The first 2 house sparrows of the year were also seen. On the 18th, the 6th yellow-browed warbler of the year was found, setting a new Skocombe record. A goldeneye on North Pond on the 21st was just the 5th for Skocombe, and the first Hooper one since 1995 was also on North Pond on the 23rd and 24th. An upland sandpiper was flush from near Twinlet on the 31st. Pending acceptance by the British Rarities Committee, this could become a 2nd for Skocombe, following the 1st, which was in a similar location in 1960.
Greg and his team managed to get out to Grassholm on the 16th, courtesy of Thousand Islands Expeditions. This annual autumn trip is to check for young gannets that are entangled in fishing gear and other plastics that the adults used when refurbishing their nests in spring. Grassholm is fairly quiet at this time of year, as most of the 40,000 or so pairs and their offspring have left for the winter. Only a few thousand adults remained on the island, and only 14 birds needed to be cut free. This was the lowest number on record, and continues the downward trend of recent years. Migrants seen taking a break on the island included a wheatear, 4 blackbirds, 27 goldfinches and 2 blackcaps. Well, that's a quick skip through the highlights of birding in Pembrokeshire in October 2020. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll look out for the November edition.